Well, welcome to election season. Or is it silly season? But in any case, election season has started.
And they are excited about electing a conservative government that puts you first, that puts more money back in your pocket.
Alright, so Mr. Scheer says we're all excited. Well, let me check with somebody here just a second.
Andrew Scheer?
Yeah. Ever heard of his name or no?
I've heard his name before, but I just don't really know who he is.
Now all the parties have their little slogans they're going to be pushing forward. Andrew Scheer wants to put me first, put Canadians first. Well, I should hope so. I mean, you're running for Prime Minister of Canada, so I would assume Canadian should be first. But what we got to be careful is don't fall for the slogans. We need policy. We need to know what you're going to do. Trudeau says he wants to work hard to get people to join the middle class. Okay, give me a policy. Give me what you're going to do. Because you're just words rolling off a duck's back.
This ballot question is so simple. Who do you trust to leave more money in your pocket for you to get ahead?
Now, when any government says that they're going to leave more money in your pocket, or they're going to cut your taxes, or they're going to cut whatever you're paying, well, essentially, what they're doing is cutting government revenue. So how's that going to help? I mean, I don't like paying taxes. I'm sure you don't like paying taxes, but it's a necessary evil. It's an evil that we have in a democracy. So that'd be like me coming to your job and saying, you know, I'm going to help you out by taking $3 an hour off your hourly pay. It doesn't make any sense. Services take money, take taxes. Roads have to be built, infrastructure has to be built, military has to be maintained. So just by coming out and saying, well, I'm going to cut and hack and slash and leave money in your pocket, well, inevitably, that means service cuts, job losses. So be careful when they're going to be saying that, because they very rarely follow up with any kind of policy, or even if they do, it's a full-blown lie. Oh, we're not going to cut any frontline workers, or we're not going to cut any workers. And as soon as they get in power, they start hacking and slashing departments.
We have to bring up the SNC-Lavalin scandal because it is still the case that Justin Trudeau refuses to allow the officials in his office to talk to the RCMP so they can do their job.
All right, so we're still not over SNC. This is all I've been hearing last while in the legislature as well. SNC, SNC, SNC. It's a dead horse. Maybe not quite as dead as we'd like it to be, but SNC is a multinational, worldwide corporation. Do you really think this company gets $1 billion contract after $1 billion contract after $1 billion contract by thinking the playing field is level or fair? Or do you think they're greasing politicians? This only came out because Miss Rabel had enough cojones to make this public. If this was under an Andrew Scheer government, nobody in the Conservative government would blow the whistle. This would have been swept under the rug, the elephant would have been left in the closet, and things would have continued. So, yeah, it came out under the Trudeau government. This isn't anything new. This is like one of those worst kept secrets. These corporations, okay, don't tell me you're not greasing politicians, okay? Now, I haven't been able to find the article about it, but I recall someone saying that SNC even had meetings with Andrew Scheer. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that, but would it surprise me? Of course not. A company like SNC or whoever it is, they don't care who's running the country. They don't care who's in charge. We're going to grease these people up. Whoever the hell's in charge is going to give us the contract.
The fact that he said that he would balance the budget, or that the budget would balance itself in 2019. Instead, massive deficits, which mean only one thing.
So, balanced budget. When is the last time we had a federal balanced budget? Governments have been overspending since the day they could borrow $1. They spend $1 and borrow $2. This has been going on since the beginning of Federation. Now, what is concerning under the Trudeau government is that we really shouldn't be running the deficits that we are. We really shouldn't be. We have a decent economy. We got decent job numbers, and we shouldn't be spending the way we are. You spend money during a recession, you spend it on infrastructure, you get people to work, you pull the economy out of the hole. Now, there's also no way that you're going to convince me that Mr. Scheer is somehow going to be balancing the budget. You want to balance the budget, you're going to go into deep cuts, whether it's service layoffs, people getting laid off, all sorts of service cuts and whatnot. Like, there's a cost to doing that. I'd like to see the balanced budget, but you're going about it the wrong way. What we need to have is better jobs. We need to have better wages. You increase the minimum wage for people, and that automatically generates more money in income tax. It also generates a better economy because now I'm going to have a couple extra dollars to spend instead of spending just on the basics or just on the very necessities, whether it's food, clothing, transportation. Give me a couple extra dollars, maybe I'll go out to a restaurant, maybe I'll go take a vacation, maybe I'll go travel somewhere. And that's going to help out the economy, which in turn helps out the deficits in the budget. But you can't just willy-nilly say, well, we're going to balance the budget. That is a very dangerous and painful statement because you know what's coming. You know it's going to be a hard line. It's going to be service cuts. It's going to hurt. You can't just come out willy-nilly, I'm going to balance the budget. It doesn't work that way.
And his carbon tax is raising the cost of everything, from gasoline to home heating to groceries.
All right, so we have carbon pricing. I know the Conservatives like to use the tactic of calling it a tax. Okay, it's money coming out of your pockets, I guess. It's a tax, but it's classified as carbon pricing. Now, what's taken place is what the Conservative governments don't tell you from all the provinces that are going through this, and with Andrew Scheer's Conservatives, is that as carbon pricing was brought in, as the legislation was brought in, it's in the legislation that 90% of what gets collected gets returned to the people, gets returned to us. Now, every province has its own formula, every province has its own numbers, but it's in the legislation. And whether it's Scott Moe, whether it's Jason Kenney, whether it's Doug Ford, whether it's Andrew Scheer, that's the one little point none of them talk about. None of them say it. They're hiding the fact that it's in the legislation that 90% of what gets collected is returned. Now, is it a perfect plan? Of course not. It's got a bunch of problems to it. You get people from smaller communities are complaining, and rightly so, that they have no choice. They have no option but to drive. They have to drive their kids to school, to the community center, to go get groceries. There isn't a network of public transportation that they can take. So they're going to be paying a higher price than people in larger cities where we have public transit and you can get away without using your car or buying fuel. Now, Scott Moe from Saskatchewan is a little surprising because I believe they had an 80-page or close to 80-page environmental plan, which could have saved off carbon pricing from the federal government. They dumped it. Doug Ford got involved and they dumped their plan. I don't know why. It was a close to 80-page report on how they're going to work the environment or work the pollution for the environment. Now, what took place at the end of growing season last year is tons and tons and tons of crop was left in the farmers' fields. They could not get to it. The weather did not allow them to get to it. It was foul weather. Now you can go, okay, it's a weather event, okay, but we have a weather event after weather event. Now they dropped it. New Brunswick, when they're coming to their elections, they were making a lot of noise about, oh yeah, we're going to fight the carbon price, we're going to fight the federal government. Well, the Conservatives got a minority government. Oops. They still were making noise for a little while and then realized, oh boy, we better change our tune because the government's going to fall before we even make our throne speech. We're not even going to make it to the throne speech. So they quieted down. They backed away from fighting the federal government on carbon pricing. Saskatchewan Superior Court has deemed carbon pricing as constitutional, so they lost that. in Ontario. It was a split decision from the Superior Court, but it has been deemed constitutional. What a guy like Doug Ford doesn't understand is he's a little itty bitty little man. He doesn't have the power he thinks he has. He came to power and he shoved new councillor ridings down in Toronto, and then he used notwithstanding to get his way, the notwithstanding clause, which he misused. Now we got the federal government saying, no, we're going to put a price on carbon. Now he's standing there crying. We're wasting $30 million in Ontario to fight this. You can't fight it. The federal government overrides the provincial government. That's all there is to it. Everybody knows that. You know that. You knew that in grade school, for crying out loud. And we're wasting a bunch of money. So the federal government, in its wording of fighting climate change, one of the companies that got a handout was $12 million went to Loblaws. This is something that is unacceptable. The Weston family, the Westons, they're worth like $10 billion. You got a corporation that they merged with another company years ago. They broke the union contract. They recontracted up. They docked people or reduced people's pay. This is a company that doesn't want to hire full-timers. They got a bunch of part-time staff in there all the time. And this is a company that gets $12 million. They could very easily afford it. The guy himself is worth $10 billion. Okay? Why the hell are we handing over $12 million to a company like Loblaws? I did email my federal representative, and I got a word salad back. Like, I really just wanted to burn the screen. It was ridiculous. That $12 million could have been very easily used for much more productive things, like let's fix up our schools, let's get some of these roads fixed up, let's get infrastructure built. Like, it's ridiculous to hand over. Now we're going to be paying twice, because Loblaws is going to put in their freezers and put in their equipment, and they're going to take those expenses and write them off against their taxable income. So we're going to be paying for it anyway. But that wasn't good enough. We had to hand over $12 million. It's ridiculous. All right, that's my rant. That was Andrew Scheer's stop in Ottawa, filmed by CBC. Love me, hate me, yell at me. You can find me on Twitter.
Andrew Scheer?
Yeah. Ever heard of his name or no?
I've heard his name before, but I just don't really know who he is.